world. How you beautiful people doing this morning? Another beautiful day. Time flies, huh? Today's what, the 20th? January? Man, time flies. Good morning, Saya. Good morning, Zazu. How you beautiful? Checking in with the morning report. Fire away. Look, I was reading this article today. Reading this article, and it was talking about Xbox is more popular than PlayStation in the U.S. study says. I'm gonna talk about it in a minute, but it says here, according to a recent study, PlayStation is less popular than Xbox in the U.S. despite its possessing the majority of the gaming console market. The console war between Microsoft and Sony have been going on since the early 2000s with the release of the original Xbox and PlayStation 2. The two console manufacturers have been contesting each other over the years for control of the video game console market, though it appears that Xbox has PlayStation beat in one region of the world, especially in terms of sales figures. The PS2 is the highest selling video game console of all time. But when the original Xbox entered the fray with Halo and a bunch of successful third-party titles, it immediately led to competition between the two. Ever since then, the Xbox and PlayStation have been struggling to outdo the other. However, in terms of market shares, there's one clear winner: Sony. And it says according to a recently released study by Gaming Smarts, the PlayStation 5 currently owns over PS5. The PS5 currently owns over 65% of the video game console market share, whereas Xbox Series X/S holds a little under 35%. However, in the United States, Xbox holds the majority of the market share with 50.18% of the gaming populace owning a Series X/S, compared to just 49.8% of people owning a PS5, barely beating out Sony in the US. Shows a chart here, and it says here, the fact that Xbox is performing so well in the United States could attribute to the fact that Microsoft is an American publisher and thus is more recognizable brand compared to Sony. Perhaps Xbox is just a more widely known console in the US than it is in other regions of the world. It says, so let me stop right here. Alright, wait a minute, let me keep going. It says, reportedly, Xbox is doing much better following the launch of the Xbox Series X/S back in 2018. The Xbox One held less than 30% of the overall gaming console market. In the years to follow, that percentage would gradually start to rise to the point where the Xbox Series X/S currently accounts for less than 35% of the overall gaming market. It's clear that Xbox is growing, but that could simply be due to the recent launch of the Xbox X Series X/S. It would be interesting to see what the future holds in terms of the Xbox Series X/X with Microsoft acquisition of Bethesda, along with a multitude of other gaming studios under the company's banner. It's clear a lot of exciting stuff is in the works. While Xbox is more popular than PlayStation in the US, only time will tell if it will be able to catch up to PlayStation in terms of worldwide market share. All right. Okay, so based on the map that they show here, this is on Games Rant. Based on the map they shows here, It shows PlayStation is very popular in the rest of the world, but United States, Alaska, and I would say Russia, a couple countries here and there, Xbox got a foothold. But here's my take on the whole situation. You got to understand, Sony Sony is a Japanese company. Xbox is an American company. Okay, so when the PlayStation 1 came in, and when Final Fantasy 7 put PlayStation on the map, PlayStation took off. Okay, remember, Nintendo should have created a 64-bit CD system, but since they're so stubborn and hard-headed and don't want to listen, they paid a price. But anyway, PlayStation was the only CD system on the market. Oh yeah, of course there was a Sega Saturn, but Sega had little issues like a little issues like with the Sega Saturn. But anyway, PlayStation 1 laid a huge PlayStation 1 had a huge impact in the gaming industry. No doubt, it had a huge impact. When the PlayStation 1 came out, I mean, it took off. Final Fantasy put it on the map. Final Fantasy 7, that was the game changer. Once Sony and Square link up, remember I told you guys about the Avengers game and why it's failing. It's because of the PlayStation 1 with Sony and Squaresoft. So PlayStation took off. So video games on CDs, even though there were CD systems before the PlayStation 1, like the Atari Jaguar, the Neo Geo CD, Panasonic 3DO, the Sega CD, Sega Saturn. When PlayStation came out and Sony and Squaresoft linked up with that when Final Fantasy 7 hit PlayStation 1, PlayStation took off. And then once all the game developers saw Final Fantasy on PlayStation, then a whole influx of game, I mean an avalanche, an onslaught, a landslide, a flood, a tsunami of PlayStation games just came out on PlayStation 1. That's when they were coming out with those double CDs, triple CDs games, and I mean the intro videos would be like in full motion video, but then you play the game, and I mean console gaming start to rise because of the PlayStation 1, and PlayStation built a huge foundation with the Sony built a huge foundation with the PlayStation 1. I'm not even going to talk about the 2. I'm talking about with 1, because the amount of RPGs that thing came out with and all the other games that they had, man. The Nintendo 64 could barely keep up with the PS1 the way they were getting games. Okay. Anyway, and then when you saw Tekken 2, Tekken 3 run on PlayStation 1, you're like, huh? That's when the arcades start to die off, man. To me, that's when the arcades start to die off, because like I used to play a lot of fighting games in the arcades. So when Tekken 2, Tekken 3 came on PlayStation 1 and you saw that, especially Tekken 3, you knew the arcade started to die off right then and there. But anyway, Sony laid a huge foundation with PlayStation 1, and that was the CD-ROM era, 700 megabytes. And then when PlayStation 2 came around, the DVD entered into the picture. So now regular CDs that was on 700 megabytes of us on a regular 700 megabytes of storage on a regular CD was out the window. Here comes DVDs with 8 to 10 gigs of storage, and Sony jumped on it. Okay, and Nintendo really didn't. I mean, they made a mini CD, but they robbed the GameCube of its true potential because the GameCube was 485 megahertz, and the PlayStation 2 was 300 megahertz. But Nintendo Corporation, like they did the Wii U, robbed the GameCube of its true potential. PlayStation 2 took off, and then in comes Microsoft, because Microsoft, they the newcomer. If they would have came out with a 100 megahertz system, if Microsoft would have came out with a 100 megahertz system, the PlayStation would have mopped the floor with them. But Microsoft came through the door with a 733 megahertz system, the Xbox, and they came in through with Halo and made their presence felt. And that's when the power struggle, Sony even knew that Microsoft was going to be a problem. So that's when the whole thing started. So Sony had a huge foundation with the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. Okay, they had a huge foundation, and then Nintendo, Nintendo, don't even get me talking about them, how they robbed the GameCube of its true potential. The GameCube would have beaten the PlayStation 2 if it had a DVD player in it, but Nintendo robbed the console, making excuses like they did the Wii U. But anyway, so Microsoft came in, and then they had to lay a foundation with the original Xbox and Halo, and then they had to turn around to match the. They came when the Xbox came in. It didn't have a DVD player, but Microsoft didn't sit there, didn't waste no time. They made this little adapter piece for the original Xbox with the remote, so you can play DVDs on the Xbox. So now the war started right between the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox, and Microsoft and Sony was going at it, and Microsoft was starting to build the infrastructure on Xbox One. They came out with Xbox Live on the original Xbox. Then Sony came out with the network adapter with that 40 gig hard drive, and I think it was Final Fantasy. And then they started to do online play with like Siphon. I think it was Siphon Filter. I think. And then Microsoft had Halo, and then online gaming in the console business started to take off. And then Nintendo, they decided to try to finally do something about online play after they were against it when the X-band modem came out back in the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo era. They were against online play. Well, now all of a sudden they want to get into the online thing. So they made this this modem for the GameCube. But Sony and Microsoft was clashing, because when Microsoft came out with that Xbox Live, Sony had to counter it, because it wouldn't make any sense to be having a PlayStation 2 and it's selling so good, but you ain't got no online play. But then Microsoft jumped on it, and they almost didn't, so they had to follow up. They had to follow up. So it was always a cat and mouse battle. Like it was always a battle, between Sony and Microsoft. And then, you know, since since Sony is a Japanese company, and it built this huge foundation with the PS1 and PS2. Microsoft was always improving their infrastructure. I mean, even with the 360, they screwed up. They fixed it. Sony came out with PlayStation 3. They were going for the jugular with the PlayStation 3. They screwed up. Cell processor. They had free online play, but then their network got hacked, and then that slowed down the PlayStation 3. And then Microsoft took off with the 360. So it was like always a battle between those two. But while the 360 and the PlayStation 3 was on the market, Microsoft was improving the infrastructure of the 360, and Sony was playing catch up. Even though they had the free online play, they were playing catch up. I mean, they still had some good exclusive on the PlayStation 3. Don't get me wrong, but that 360 did some damage. And then the Xbox One came into the picture. Sony came out with PlayStation 4. Microsoft screwed up with the game sharing thing. Sony took off with the PlayStation 4. And then Microsoft fired the guy that was in charge of the gaming division and hired Phil Spencer. And then Phil Spencer came in and hit the ground running. You know what I'm saying? Hit the ground running, laced up his boots, and was like, okay, let's go. And Sony was like, you know what I'm saying? But Sony, when they had the PS4, they didn't have external hard drive support. But with the Xbox One, Xbox had Xbox Live, and they were improving. Once they got Phil Spencer, they had Xbox Live, but the Xbox One had external hard drive support. So that's another key reason why the Xbox One is doing so good. Is doing so good, especially in the U.S. But then Phil Spencer came in and started improving the infrastructure, improving it, and they had some games to go along with it. And they had This Week on Xbox and Inside on Xbox, and then they had the mixer. So they had like 3 shows on. They had 3 things going with the Xbox Plus, Xbox Live, and then you had the games with Gold, and then you could see in the US, you could see that Microsoft had an advantage based on what they were doing. Sony was playing catch up, right? Sony was playing catch up with the PS4, and Microsoft kept improving the infrastructure. And another key reason why the Xbox is doing so good in the US, Sony didn't have a show to compete with This Week on Xbox, because every week, every Friday, This Week on Xbox is always out. So they're always showing you what Microsoft is showing you, what they're up to and what they're coming out with. And then Sony had to start to play catch up, man. They had to, you know. Then the PS4 started to have external hard drive support after their fans got on them about it. You know what I'm saying? Because like with the PS4, you had like a 500 gig hard drive or a terabyte on one of them, and then like soon as you run out of space, you got to take the the one out, take the hard drive out the console, and then put a new one in. And a lot of PlayStation fans didn't like that because they saw what was happening with the Xbox, and they had to make changes, man. So Phil Spencer kept moving, improving infrastructure, updates, deals, publisher seals. Man, I've seen it, man. Trust me, I've seen it. And then they didn't stop with just the original Xbox One. Once they got the original Xbox One up to speed, then they brought out the Xbox One S, and then they were streaming games with I think they were streaming games in 4K, but you couldn't play games in 4K. And it didn't stop there. Then they took one more crack at it and said, okay, we're gonna bring out an Xbox One X and 4K game. And once they did that, that was the dagger, man. Xbox took off. So yeah, PlayStation was always PlayStation when it comes to their network and their console. They were always behind, you know. And then not only that, the Xbox had the backwards compatibility thing on Xbox One going too. So PlayStation now is playing catch up. Even though on the PlayStation 3, you had, even though with the PlayStation 3 they had a backwards compatibility thing, but they took it out. They took it out. So Microsoft saw that as an opportunity. Like, okay, you're taking backwards compatibility for granted. Okay, we're going to use it and show you how to do it. That's what. So basically, Microsoft took what Sony wasn't good at and capitalized off of it, and they took off in the U.S., man. Trust me, I've seen it. So Sony was always like playing catch up to. They're playing catch up to Microsoft right now. Microsoft is like years ahead of them right now because with the moves they've been making, plus with this Game Pass that Xbox has, and then you now you're about to add EA Play to Game Pass, and now you're gonna add Ubi Play, and then there's that Bethesda 7.5 that Bethesda ZeniMax deal. Microsoft was always making moves while Sony was like dragging their feet, not taking care of business with their infrastructure. Microsoft was capitalizing off every mistake that Sony made. Every mistake that with the infrastructure that Sony made, Microsoft was capitalizing off it. And that's why they're ahead in the United States, man. You know what I'm saying? That's why they're ahead. So, and they're doing good. So, Sony right now, I mean, they're playing catch up. And then with the Xbox Series X, backwards compatibility again became an issue because Microsoft took that and capitalized on it, where you can run your old games at 60 to 120 frames a second. And then the PlayStation, then Sony didn't capitalize off of it like they were supposed to. You can play some PlayStation 4 games on the PS5, but then what about your PlayStation 3, your PlayStation 2, your PlayStation 1? You can't do that. Microsoft capitalized off that, and uh, that's what that's what's happening here in this article. Because if you look at it, that's what's happening right now. Worldwide people know PlayStation, but worldwide people know Xbox too. But Microsoft capitalized off the key of mistakes that Sony didn't take care of. Sony sold a lot of console, but their infrastructure was shaky. They weren't moving. Xbox was moving, improving the controllers, improving the consoles, everything. That's why they're doing so good in the US, man. They took care of business. You know what I'm saying? So they took the mistakes. They took the mistakes that Nintendo and Sony took for granted. Period. Capitalized off it and then used it against them. And that's what's going on here in this article. So yeah, Xbox, man. Xbox is good, man. Xbox One is good, man. The way they get their games, they're getting their games, man. And then like see Phil Spencer, he's so ahead of the curve. He came out and told everybody, told Sony and Nintendo, sales ain't the end all be all to video games. And that was a wake up call for them to improve their infrastructure. Microsoft is making moves, man. So yeah. So the mistakes that the taking things for granted cost Nintendo and Sony, and Microsoft saw an opportunity and capitalized off of it. Like I said, that Bethesda ZeniMax deal, I mean, that was for Game Pass, but that was to let Sony know too that you're not just gonna be you're not the you can't just keep doing this exclusive and time exclusive and then we sit there and wait. We're gonna put an end to that. So what they did was like, okay, they looked around the market and was like, okay, all right, so which company has value? Which company has value? Which company can help us grow so we can make some return on investments? And I mean, we got them covered financial wise, but which company suits us well? Bethesda snatched them. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, they're doing their thing, man. So yeah, Microsoft, when they hired Phil Spencer, man, they did they just took off. They did not look back. Once they cleaned up that mistake with the first Xbox One, they took off and they do not look back. And not only that, they were always improving their graphical user interface, and they were always improving their eShops, something that Sony and Nintendo should be doing on a regular basis. So Microsoft got them beaten in a lot of areas, man, and that's why they're doing so good in the US, man. Can't touch them right now. You know what I'm saying? You can't touch them. So Sony is playing catch up right now, and then they came out with this Game Pass thing that's supposed to be like Netflix. Music to a lot of gamers' ears, man. Music to a lot of gamers' ears. So yeah, they're doing good, man. You know what I'm saying? Nintendo and Sony took things for granted, man. Especially Nintendo too, because it's always lies, excuses, and laziness when it comes to Nintendo, man. That's why they're always struggling with their console. They never take care of their gamers. So a lot of their gamers went over to Xbox, and some of the Sony gamers left and went over to Xbox. Like, enough of this, and they're with Xbox ever since. So yeah, that's why Xbox is doing so good, man. So Phil Spencer got the team rolling, man, and they're doing their thing. Don't get me wrong, Sony laid a foundation with the PlayStation 1, no doubt. Laid a foundation with the PlayStation 1. Laid a huge foundation. But when Microsoft came into the picture, man, Sony knew they was gonna have their hands full, and they wouldn't go. Sony knew they had to step up. So What Sony took for granted, Microsoft capitalized off of it, and it's showing right now. It is showing. So Xbox ain't going nowhere, man. So based on this map gonna be changing. Some of them blue areas might be green. Some of those, seriously, some of those blue areas on that map might be green. So yeah, man, that's the way it is, man. It's competition. And then Sony and Nintendo now is starting to learn from Microsoft. Nintendo had the Wii U. They had all angles of gaming covered. So all they had to do was improve the infrastructure of the Wii U that they have, meaning that they put some more CPU power and RAM behind the Wii U and more storage space on the CD and continue using it. And then keep working on their network and keep giving the Wii U new features. The Switch should have never been built, man. I'm saying they had all angles covered with that thing, but they went against it and now they're paying for it. But anyway, yeah, Sony and Nintendo right now is learning from Microsoft. Microsoft took the lead in the gaming industry infrastructure wise, man. Don't worry about the sales, they're gonna get it. But infrastructure wise, that Xbox ain't no joke. And Microsoft don't like to make excuses, man. See, Sony and Nintendo always got an excuse. Microsoft, they don't like to make excuses. That's why they're always moving. They're like ants all over the place moving. Sony and Nintendo is playing catch up, man. Okay? Catch up. They're learning from Microsoft. You let Microsoft came in and beat you to Game Pass? I mean, think of it. Game Pass. There's no other name that can top that. That's the new Netflix for video games. It's a wrap, dude. So yeah, Xbox is doing their thing, man. They are doing their thing. You can't, I mean, Sony and Nintendo took things for granted, man. They were supposed to be moving. You know what I'm saying? They were supposed to be moving. This map, them colors about to be changing, man. Because Microsoft, the entire world runs on Windows, man. So of course, Xbox. So you best believe the Xbox is running off the Windows network, man. You best believe it. So yeah. Oh yeah, they're doing their thing, man. And then not only that, you can play Xbox games on PCs. You can play Xbox games on PCs if you don't feel like getting the console. So yeah, I mean, Sony and Nintendo right now is playing catch up. You know what I'm saying? Playing catch up, So, but this map, the colors are about to change, man. A lot of people got Xboxes out there, man, based on the map that I'm looking at. But anyway, that's just the way it is between those two, man. Competition. Sony laid a huge foundation with not with that PlayStation 1, man. It's the one that really did it, man. The PlayStation 2 was just the icing on the cake, man. But that PlayStation 1, yeah, it laid a huge foundation for Sony's success, man. And then the PlayStation 2 was the icing, man. Because once DVDs came into the picture, and then when the industry was moving away from videotapes, cartridge, floppy disk, and they were trying to put movies on CDs, PlayStation 2 took off. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So Microsoft had to match PlayStation 2's tempo with the original Xbox by raising the bar a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's how it is, man. PlayStation took off though, but the PlayStation 1 ain't to be played with, man. It laid a huge foundation, man. Had a lot of good art, had a lot of good games, man. And plus a lot of gamers were RPG fanatics, man. So yeah, it took off. And like I said, PS2 came out. They went from a 700 megabytes CD to 8 to 10 gigs of storage on the PlayStation 2 DVDs. Oh yeah, PlayStation 2 took off. And then when Microsoft saw that, Microsoft said, okay, you might have, we're gonna beat you in a key area. You might have 300 megahertz, but we're gonna come in with 735, and we're gonna add a DVD player on top of that. And now the clashing began between Sony and Microsoft. So yeah, man. Yeah. So I mean, don't get me wrong, man. Sony is Sony and Microsoft keep the industry. They keep the game industry going with the competition between those two. They keep the game industry going, man. So you have to give Microsoft their respect. You have to. You just have to. You just have to give them their respect. And you have to give Sony their respect too, man. But both of them, they keep the game industry going. Okay. Nintendo should have never went against the Wii U, and I keep saying it till this day. It had the entire Nintendo fan base needs met. It just needs some power behind the system. That sales marketing commercial failure is a lie. Okay, the Wii U was dealing with lies, excuses, and laziness. Okay, that's the issue with the Wii U. So yeah, but Sony and Microsoft, man, oh yeah, yeah, man, they keep the console business going, man. They keep it going, man. It's just competition. Anyway, nice talking to you, beautiful people. Chris, still a Star Wars and Star Trek thing, or Dark Side? I'm gone. Peace. Oh.